Hi guys, welcome back aboard good old Athena. Being full-time cruisers is amazing. We get to go to a lot of cool places off the beaten tourist path. But living at anchor is kind of challenging when there's 2 weeks of basically non-stop rain forecast. The reason it's a little challenging for us when it rains day after day after day is because we are heavily dependent on solar for our energy needs. My name is Mess, this is my wife Ava. I've spent the last 5 years on a somewhat extensive refit of our 1987 Warrior 38 named Athena. That was a DIY fun-packed adventure complete with a very extensive osmosis treatment, building a new rudder using vacuum infusion, rebuilding the entire deck, gutting and subsequently rebuilding most of the interior, painting the topsides, and a ton of other projects. The summer of 2021 we started cruising full time. Now we're finally ready to begin our adventure. Here aboard Athena we have all kinds of modern luxuries like a fridge, freezer, a washing machine, a dryer, a water heater, a water maker, induction cooktop, electric oven, just a whole bunch of doohickeys that consume electricity. Having made YouTube videos for about 9 years now, I've developed a little bit of a spidery sense, and that sense is tingling right now because somebody is about to leave a comment saying that we've got too many electronic doohickeys here aboard Athena, like maybe for instance the washing machine. Some people really like the idea of minimalistic cruising, and I get the appeal of that, I truly do. But on the other hand, some processes, like for instance doing laundry in a bucket, at least for me, just gets kind of old kind of quick. I spent 7 years living on a sailboat without standing headroom and without hot water. So I have tried living simple and I've tried living very small. But for me, given the choice personally, I would just like to have a few of the luxuries that most people have in their houses. Like for instance a washing machine and a dryer. And sure, when we get further south we won't need the dryer as much, but here where it's raining a lot right now, that thing is awesome. Like I mentioned, we get the vast majority of our electricity from the power of the sun, but in rainy, overcast conditions like it's gonna be for the next couple of weeks, we've got a secret weapon hiding inside of our shower. In here is the opening into our technical compartment. Depending on the size of your solar panel array, the size of your battery bank, and your energy needs in general, if you're only cruising in places where there's tons of sun, you may not need a genset, but for us, it gives us a lot of flexibility. This is a Fisher Panda 5000i PMS, and I installed this before we left Denmark last summer. We've only just now come up on the first 40 hours of runtime, meaning that we're now due for an oil change. I'm glad that we're only now coming up on the first 40 hours. But looking at the weather forecast over the next week or two, I think we're going to be putting a lot more hours on the genset. This glorious pile of wetness here is the weather forecast for the next 8 or 9 days. There is absolutely zero sun. We're basically out of clean clothes, so we want to do laundry, but before we do that, I want to take care of that oil change for the genset. To do that, I'll let the genset run for about 10 minutes just to heat up the engine oil, and then we can do the oil change. This is my first ever time changing oil on the genset, so I've consulted the manual just to make sure that I don't mess anything up. And this is also how I know that I need to change it now, because it is a brand new genset. They're recommending to do the first oil change after 35 to 50 hours. An oil change is easy and not a big deal, and it's especially not a big deal when you have instructions that are this nice. In the back of the instructions there's this neat little graphic that shows you what type of oil to use, and fortunately we can use the exact same oil we're using for our main Volvo engine, so we only have to carry the one type. I've got this neat little man purse here with all the tools I use the most often, and I think for the oil change we only need this guy. Very conveniently, I've got the genset up on this old bunk here, so draining the oil using the drain hose here is gonna be super simple. And let's just open this up so the oil can flow freely. I can definitely hear the oil draining. The engine only takes about 1.3 liters, so this should be over fairly quick. And that was it for draining the old engine oil. This feels like a little over a liter. Now I'm gonna store it in this old container here until we are somewhere where I can dispose of this in a responsible manner. To not get oil everywhere, I've made a little single-use paper funnel. It looks like there is about 1.5 liters left in this new container here, so let's give it most of that and see where we end up. I've let the engine sit for a little bit, and we are 2/3 full on the dipstick here, which I believe is what the manual recommends. I've also checked the coolant level, we're good there. There's no oil filter on this engine to change, there's an oil screen, but I don't think we need to replace that until we hit 500 hours. Let's get the cowling back on, and then we're finally ready to do some laundry. With the cowling and the hatch back in place, the genset actually isn't that loud. This is what it sounds like when it's starting. Yep, and that is the genset running. I hope the mic's picking it up. All of our clothes is already shoved in there, so a little bit of soapy. And we're off to the races. There are a few things that we can do here on the boat to optimize our energy consumption. Like for instance, when we do laundry. Like right now we have the genset running, so right now is the perfect time to do laundry. That's because if we weren't running the genset, we would have to have that AC power coming from the inverter, meaning our lithium bank. But that inverter is not 100% efficient. I think it's something like 85% or something like that. So by powering the washing machine off of the lithium bank, we're losing roughly 15% worth of energy. Of course, if it was nice and sunny outside right now and we were using the power of the sun to power the washing machine, the 15% loss in the inverter is not that important. But right now we are burning diesel, and diesel is expensive, so it's well worth it to just try and plan things out a little bit. It is the next day, and we have about 10 seconds left of sunshine before it starts raining again. And we did also get a little bit of sun yesterday, and the solar panels did capture that. So why don't we head down below and take a look at our energy situation from yesterday. The little screen we've got up here is connected to a Victron Servo box. That shows us the state of charge, and it also logs all of our energy consumption and generation to the interwebs. This is what yesterday looked like. We got 1.8 kilowatt hours from the sun, we made 9.5 kilowatt hours from the generator, and we had a consumption, but I think that's only on the AC side, of 5.9 kilowatt hours. So that's doing laundry, running the dryer, and also cooking. I was very surprised to see that we actually got almost 2 kilowatt hours from the sun yesterday, because there sure was a lot of rain. Having a little device that logs your energy generation and consumption like this is really nice if you're living off the grid like we are here. It really helps you understand how much energy you're bringing in, how much you're generating, and what you can do to improve that. Because of this little logging tool, I know that during the really nice summer days with lots of sun, we were generating up to 8 kilowatt hours per day. And that is enough that if we just do a little bit of careful planning, we don't actually need to run the genset. But of course, it's not sunny and summer all the time. Today is supposed to be less rainy than the last couple of days, so today's probably our best chance to go out and explore a little bit. There's supposed to be a really nice view of this area from the mountain here behind us. Thanks to the magic of our dinghy davits, we don't even need to bail the dinghy. All we have to do is just pluck her back up and we should be ready to go. But we better bring our little bailer because yeah, it is probably gonna rain. And we're off. I checked Navionics before we left. The tidal range here is about 3 meters, and we're basically at low tide now. So yeah, we'll see if we can find somewhere to tie up the dinghy where we won't have to swim out to get it when we get back from our walk. We found this delightful little jetty here. Hopefully we're far enough inland that we won't have to swim out and untie that when the tide comes up.
We are anchored at the top of Rio de Vigo, and it is very well protected here, but not just for our little sailboat, it also was a great protection for an entire Spanish fleet back in the 1700s.
We tied up the dinghy somewhere down there, and we're heading up somewhere on that mountain. I think it's safe to say that we're here in the Rias during the off-season. I expect this area to be very popular during the summer, but I'm actually kind of glad we came here during the fall. Well, it is raining a lot, which is causing us to burn more diesel, but it also adds a lot of atmosphere, the low-hanging clouds and all the fog and stuff. It's really nice. I might have been slightly premature in praising the rain in all its glory. We're coming up on the viewpoint, and I don't think there's going to be much of a view.
Ta-da!
Oh, glorious view. We had kind of a plan with coming here because this was supposed to be a good view of the top of the Ria, which would tie in really nicely into Ava's last story about the history of this place. But yeah, sorry for the somewhat obstructed view.
What you can see of this whole area is well known for the Battle of Rand, which is when 138 Anglo-Dutch boats attacked a Spanish-French fleet. The Spanish and French fleet were carrying what was known to be the greatest treasure to ever have crossed the oceans. Now, this dates back to the discoveries of the West Indies back in 1492 and all the battles to get the best trade routes across the oceans. Spain was able to get a pretty spiffy trading route. They were able to trade freely with the East, and they secured a route all the way from Spain to the Pacific. Now, the French were like, hey, that sounds pretty cool. Can we get in on that? And the Spanish were like, yeah, we're not that big of an army and we need some bodyguards, so why don't you hop on board? Fast forward a couple hundred years to 1702 when the Spanish were about to cross with the greatest treasure. The French were like, hey, we can help, and they sent 50 ships to help protect the Spanish. Well, the Anglo-Dutch got a whiff and they were like, hey, that sounds like pretty good loot. And you know, they really didn't like that the Spanish and the French were colluding. They didn't think that was good to have so much power in one region. So they were like, let's seize those ships and take all their treasure. Who would have thought? Getting word of the attack, the Spanish and French ships came right into this area to be protected from the attack. They even built a barricade across this bridge area with shovels and logs and ship masts. Well, unfortunately for the Spanish and French, the fog that's so famous for this area would actually be beneficial to the Anglo-Dutch, and they were able to sneak past all the cannons in Vigo and get through the barricade up into the little bay area here. After the Anglo-Dutch defeated the Spanish and French fleet, it was not a pretty sight. They seized what was left of what they could find of the treasure. Some of it was hidden by the Spanish and some of it was lost into the water. But don't you worry, because we have our dive gear and we're gonna find the rest of the treasure.
I think we might save the diving for treasure until we get to the Caribbean.
You never do what I want to do.
How lucky are we? The weather cleared up for like 10 seconds and now we can actually see the entire bottom of the Ria. Super awesome view. And if you look closely, you can see Athena way down there. I just checked an online weather radar and it looks like the next bunch of rain is rolling in, should be here any minute now. So hopefully we can get a little bit closer to the dinghy before it starts raining again. And we have the first fatality of this hike, my boot. If memory serves, I got these boots from my dad about 10 years ago, over 10 years ago, because they were slightly the wrong shape for his feet and they seem to fit me okay. So yeah, hopefully that can be fixed.
But these boots, nothing wrong with them.
And we're back at the dinghy. That worked out really well. Our little tie-off point there is still above water and she's floating and looks unharmed. What didn't work out so well is the boot situation. This one is coming off and the other one came off completely. A few days have gone by since our lovely walk and I do have a little update on the boots here. It turns out it's actually the rubber part here on the boot itself that's disintegrating. So yeah, there will be no fixing these. But we've been here at this anchorage now for exactly 1 week. I've had our chat plotter here on for the entire week, and that's left us with something kind of cool. Wherever the boat goes, we leave behind this little dotted line here as a track. And if we zoom in on where we've been anchored, you can see that that track has formed basically a perfect half circle. Looking at that almost perfect half circle makes me think that the anchor is holding really well, which is great news. We had one night where it was gusting up to 38, but it doesn't look like we've moved at all. A big theme in this week's video ended up being energy generation and consumption, so I thought it'd only be fitting that we end the week by summing up how much energy we got from the sun and how much we got from the genset. Even with all the rain we've had this week, we've still managed to claw in on average 1.2 kilowatt hours per day from the solar panels. I'm glad I got the oil change on the genset out of the way, because to cover our energy needs, we have had to put 14.5 hours on the genset. That is about 2 hours every day. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there that's gonna think it's bad that we're burning diesel, but those 14.5 hours worth of runtime translates into only something like 17 liters or 3 gallons roughly worth of diesel, and that covers all of our energy and transportation needs because of the electric outboard. 17 liters in my book is not a lot. I think, in fact, I used more fuel than that commuting to and from work when I used to live in a house. So yeah, it would have been nice if we could have gotten more of the energy from the sun, but we can't really control that. As always, I have been constantly refreshing the weather forecast, and it finally looks like these southwesterly winds that have been keeping us in this anchorage for the last week are gonna stop sort of towards the end of next week. And that means, well, hopefully in next week's video we can leave Spain, start heading down the coast of Portugal to Porto, where I think we'll stay a few days, and then depending on the orca situation, we might hopefully be able to push on towards Lisbon. And on that hopeful note, we hope to see all of you guys back here aboard Athena next week for hopefully absolutely no orcas, but a little bit of sailing fun. So yeah, as always, feel free to leave a comment down below, and don't forget, if you've enjoyed this video,
please remember to leave a like.
See you!